This is ongoing for over 100 years, since Zionism started, before the State of Israel started. And till today, people stand up every day, every week. They go out, they demonstrate, they cry, they speak up and say, this is not us, this is not in our name, this is not Judaism, we have no right to occupy another people, we have no right to have a state, as I will with God's help explain. And they get for that their reward from God is great, and the reward from the Zionists is being brutally beaten, arrested, and sometimes killed. So we understand fully what the pressure it is for people to open their doors to let our message be heard. That being said, we especially, God bless those who are not intimidated and stood up to this. And we hope, with God's help in the future, that we should be able to come to celebrate a free Palestine totally, with everybody being fearful of all these evil messengers who are trying to actually be an impediment to the word of God and the name of God, which is peace. So assalamu alaikum, peace to all of you. Thank you very much for coming. I think I have to really clarify something. I'm not coming with my message or my colleague's message. I'm simply coming here, as we like to say in Judaism, there's an example like a shofar. A shofar is the horn that you blow. The shofar blows a horn, and on the holidays, it's a very holy mitzvah. It's broadcasting a message. So the horn isn't it's from an animal. It's not the greatness of the horn. It's a message. It's just conveying a message. I'm not here saying my words. This is pure the Torah view, what Judaism is. I'm just going to, in brief, try to explain what Judaism is about, the difference between what Judaism is and what you today think, or many people unfortunately think Judaism is, the difference between the relationship that Jewish people had up until 100 years ago as a given in Muslim and Arab countries, and what it is today, with God's help. Judaism is a religion subservient to the Almighty. That's all it is, an acceptance of the commandments given to us on Sinai, to accept the rule of the Almighty, that it's God's world, and we are to do what He commanded of us. Zionism is a mere 100-odd years, a new movement, relatively new, compared. Judaism is thousands of years. Zionism just started recently. It is the... now that's not fair, I'm not using it even. Zionism is just the expression of a people who want to enjoy their whims, and in order that it should be dignified and accepted and legitimized, they're simply taking our name, Judaism, and dressing what they're doing in the cloth of Judaism. They're transforming this Judaism that is the subservience to God into a diametric opposite, into a mere materialist issue, a nationalism, to have a piece of land, to have an army, to have an Olympic team. And they simply call this, with the Star of David, Maccabees, all these different Jewish names, they call themselves the State of Israel. This is one of the roots of the called Nakba, a tragedy. This is, for us, a terrible tragedy. It's a double and triple tragedy, because not only is evil being perpetrated against other people, and as I will explain with God's help, against God, against the teachings of the Torah, but all that is being done in the name of Judaism, in the name of the Jewish people, and people think the more religious you are, the more you support what the people, because you're very religious. The more religious, then you must be more attached to a Jewish state, the State of Israel. And if that's the case, then also besides this rebellion against God, you also have the results of this unfortunately endless river of bloodshed, the rift, the mistrust between God's creations around the world. This is not what it's all about. Again, Judaism is one thing and one thing only. The Jewish people stood up on Mount Sinai, accepted the rule of God, to be subservient to God, and follow the teachings of the Torah that is required of us, 613 commandments, the Sabbath, kosher, family purity, many laws. That said, by the way, the time doesn't allow for all these different things, but we believe that every human being is created by God, and if you keep the 7 commandments of Noah, that there's one God, not to serve idol worshipers, not kill, not steal, not to commit adultery, and then to have a court system, every country has to have, not to eat from an animal while it's shaking. If you're doing these things, it's Elijah the prophet writes, and in our law books, Maimonides writes, then you will inherit the world to come. You don't have to be Jewish to serve God. And that is the way we Jewish people lived with the other people around the world, and we didn't in any manner look at another person and say you have to be Jewish or else you can't serve God, you're not good or anything, God forbid. That wasn't the case. And you read the stories of Abraham, you will see that but again, time doesn't let it, but this is the fact, this is the way the Jewish belief is. There is no argument about that. That is in the law books, Maimonides, the Shulchan Aruch, it's called, from Rabbi Yosef Karo. This is across the board, around the world, this is what Judaism is. And we followed for thousands of years, now a few thousand years. 2,000 years ago, there was the destruction of the temple. Now, if you look in the books of the prophets, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, all of the books, they all were busy warning the Jewish people prior to the destruction of the temple a little over 2,000 years ago, that they should be careful because they have to be on a very high level of holiness in order to remain in the Holy Land as a nation. Then God wasn't satisfied with the Jewish people on the level that they were on, and therefore the destruction of the temple came about around 2,000 years ago. And then we were clearly put under an oath of God, a prophecy by King Solomon. It's all there to say in Shir Hashirim. It says, I've put you under oath, the daughters of Jerusalem, not to awaken with the buck and the deer of the field, not to awaken my love prematurely. And the rabbis explain, and there's no argument about this, that we will put under 3 oaths, because this verse is repeated three times in King Solomon's prophecies. And they explain that it means we're under 3 oaths. 1, after the destruction of the temple, we are not to return in mass, in large numbers, back to the Holy Land. Secondly, we are not to rebel against any nation. We should be loyal citizens in every country we're residing. Thirdly, not to make any attempt to end exile. The Jewish people for 2,000 years went through the Crusades, the Inquisition, many, many trials and tribulations, Second World War, all of this. And we, as a Jewish people, yes, it was frustrating, it's hard, but we never questioned God. God is all compassionate. God is not to be questioned. God is the Almighty. He makes all our dinei. It's impossible to grasp the greatness of God. And so how can we question his deeds and what he does? But we know that he's totally all compassionate. But sometimes people even ask rabbis, maybe we should just try to make our own sovereignty. And the rabbi said, have patience. God is like a father or a mother who sees the child crying with an earache in the middle of the night. And most probably we could say that the mother and the father feels more the pain of the child than the child himself. And if God, that is God, the Almighty, and if he would feel, if the time is right to end the exile, in a blink of an eye, the exile will end. We believe this will come, and we pray and yearn for the end of exile, which is around 2,000 years. What does that mean, the end of exile for us as Jews? We believe one day the Almighty will reveal his glory throughout the world. There will stop being the concept of atheism. There will stop being this questioning God. Everybody will feel and believe in God. All humanity will join together and serve God as one. We won't have to stand with a gun and say, you better believe what I'm saying. At that time, we believe God himself, without any human intervention, will build the third temple, and everybody will join hands and go up and serve God. That's what we say in our high holiday prayers. You can look at it, you can see it. In all our prayers, we pray and yearn and hope for one thing, the revelation of the Almighty's glory, not of having a national home or anything. This is what we're here on this world to serve God, to bring glory to the Almighty. That's what we believe we're here for. Yes, we're human beings, we have our frailties, we're human beings, we have our bodily functions, what we need to do, but we believe the purpose, the ultimate purpose of a person is to bring respect and glory to God, and the ultimate, the pinnacle of all of this will be one day when all humanity will recognize the one God. Look in our prayers, you can see that's what it's all about, nothing else. And we believe it will come one day. And when that comes, it won't be, again, me having to prove to you or anybody else proving one to another. It will be the will of all humanity, and we say in our prayers, it says all the nations will join hands and come and serve God. So prior to that day, we are told by God, have patience. This is part of the medicine. Medicine is bitter a lot of times, but it brings the refuah, it brings the back to good health. God wants, some rabbis say, to break our haughtiness. He has us dispersed amongst the nations, that we are not to have our own sovereignty. We were expressly and explicitly warned by God, we are not to have our sovereignty, not to return in mass. We accept that. And this is our medicine. And our medicine, being that God is perfect, serves two purposes. And I'm quoting now, this is Rabbi Shamshin Raful Hirsch, of blessed memory, who was a rabbi in the German communities of Germany. We have it in our books, you can look it up. He's a very famous rabbi in Washington Heights. There's a whole group of people who came from Germany, a whole community. He was around 100 odd years ago, more than 100 years ago. And basically he said, a king punishes somebody, he hangs a person for being a revolutionist or something who did some terrible crime. Now, the people that are affected, the family members and everybody, each one individually, according to the level of how they're affected by this person being hanged, the king can't help it because he's a human being. He hangs the person and everybody else gets affected. But the Almighty is perfect. Every person that is touched by the hand of the Almighty, for good and for bad, it's perfectly according to the will of God. So he said, when we are being dispersed amongst the world, it is for the purpose of breaking our haughtiness. At the same time, ideally, if we would be serving God properly, we are called a people of the book. We are supposed to be studying the Torah, following the Torah, doing good deeds, emulating God. Just as God is compassionate, we say, Mahu rachum afata teirachum. Just as God is compassionate, you should be compassionate. That people should learn to serve God. That's what Judaism is about. And certainly, we accept this medicine. And when rabbis were asked through the hardships of Judaism, when they went through hard times, they said to the rabbis, maybe we should buy a piece of land here, there. The rabbis always, throughout these responses from Maimonides 600 years ago, 800 years ago, 300 years ago, every time they said, have patience, have patience. When God will see fit, it will end. The Zionists that started a mere 100 odd years ago, either they totally refuted that there is a God, or they refute that God is the master of the universe, and they keep on saying that it's rooted in blasphemy. All their concepts, if you listen to their mantras, they say, where was God by Hitler? Where was God by this? You know, if you're not going to stand up yourself, you're not going to be able to. All of a sudden, they accept this. When you question them and they need some miracle, they say, "Oh, God, help me." I mean, maybe they don't, but I'm saying that. Or if they understand that their body will implode, there's DNA, everything. God has the power, and all of a sudden, they say, "Where is God by this issue, that issue?" Because they don't. These are non-believers or people who don't respect the laws of God and so forth. Therefore, they say. That is the root of what Zionism is. That God, so the excuse of why they say they're making a state. That God doesn't protect, God forbid, and therefore we have to have our own protection. Our insurance policy, they call it, the state of Israel. And in truth, that is just rooted in blasphemy. It's clearly against the words of the Torah. We're not to have that. And secondly, it's blasphemy. What do you mean, where is God? God can protect us. He was here from creation, from before, all the time, and He's here there now. But as I say, most of these people are simply, they're using this excuse to play on the emotions of other people, because they don't believe in God altogether. Others are convinced by this that they have to have something to protect them because they're not using their mind to understand how contradictory it is to so many other facts of life. But whatever the reason is, it's clearly flies in the face of the teachings of the Torah that we're not allowed to have a state, period. Not 1 inch of Jewish sovereignty, and this was and is respected by Jews universally. Jews, invariably, if you will go around the world, you will go to the very religious communities. The more the religious the community is, the more anti-Zionist they are. If you will come to New York, you will see right across from Manhattan, the most concentrated religious community is in Brooklyn. Right across from Manhattan, it's called Williamsburg. There's not one Israeli flag. The same thing, you will go in Mea Shearim, you go in Jerusalem, you go to London, Stamford Hills, the most religious community. Again, why is it like that? Why, when you go to the Israeli Day Parade, you'll see it's more modern people, more what they call modern. They like to call that this is modern, whatever, that's the day. But the ones who are more religious, you won't see them going there. Why? Now, if this is such a great thing, they can use the Star of David and call it the state of Israel, Jacob in the Bible. So how come, and normally this is that the more the religious the people, that they don't support it. Something is weird, something is funny. People who give their lives for their religion, we pay for private schooling. We give our whole lives eating kosher food, keeping the Sabbath and everything. And all of a sudden, to this such a fundamental issue, to have our own state, to return to the land that God gave us, and all of a sudden, all these people are not here. Something is wrong. So start thinking, why is it these people who don't make compromises in their religion, they do everything from the day they're born till the day they pass on, they give of their lives and money and everything they do for the religion, why are they opposed to the state? So the simple reason is because they love God and they're following the religion. It has to be like that, and it is like that. I always like to quote, I have the chief rabbi of Palestine. We were saying that when they ratified the state of Israel, so the United Nations sent a delegation to Palestine, and they questioned the people from the different communities, from the Muslim community, the Christian community, and the Jewish community. Understand, there was a Jewish community living, whoever's from Palestine will tell you, and I just spoke to some people before here, very sweet people were talking about how they lived together for hundreds of years. Everybody bemoans this. We were living together. What happened? There was a Jewish community that was a solid religious Jewish community. 90% of the Jews there or more were religious. There was no such thing as a desecration of the Sabbath in Jerusalem. And these people, when they were asked about having a state, they were opposed to it. The chief rabbi of Palestine, as I quote in the book, it's called Traditional Torah Opposition to Zionism. In 1947, the chief rabbi of Palestine, that's a year prior to the ratification of the State of Israel by the UN, he pleaded with the United Nations when he was approached. And he said, in fact, I have one rabbi, a young man who's a grandson of a student this chief rabbi of Palestine. And his grandfather was my rabbi, passed away a few years ago. I have my colleague here, Rabbi Rosenberg, is 8 generations Palestinian. They'll all attest to this. The grandparents are alive, thank God, and they tell how they lived together in total harmony. And they remember when the delegation came. I had spoken to this rabbi. They said, they remember when the delegation came from the UN. They were asked, "What do you want the Jewish state?" Obviously, the Muslim community wasn't excited about that, and not the Christian, but the Jewish community. This is what the chief rabbi said. I'm going to quote just one sentence of his statement that was given to the Declaration before the United Nations on July 16, 1947. He said, "We furthermore wish to express our definite opposition to a Jewish state in any part of Palestine." Now, this was nothing to do with they were fearful of 65 years of death and suffering and bloodshed and fear that when you want to take an orange out of a crate, it may explode. This has nothing to do with that, of suicide bombers and all that. This was prior to all of that. They could have figured that, Britain is going to give them the land and it's hunky-dory, everything's fine. No, but they said, we don't want this. And then a few months later, 4 months later, again, he saw that being ignored. They heard that they're going to ratify the state. So in November 1947, again, the chief rabbi, J.Z. Dushinsky, Rabbi Yosef Tzvi Dushinsky of blessed memory, wrote a letter to the Secretary General of the United Nations in Lake Success, and it said, the Jewish Orthodox community of Jerusalem, comprising 60,000 souls, objects to the plea of including Jerusalem in the Jewish state and or its residents becoming automatically citizens of the Jewish state. Our community demands that Jerusalem be an international zone under your protection with full autonomy and its residents be free citizens of the international zone of Jerusalem. We beg of you not to take any action before receiving a memorandum. Basically, the point was, why didn't he want it? They didn't want it because it's against God, it's illegitimate, it's illegal, it's evil. And then this crime of the state of Israel, as I've been talking about now, I know that I've not stressed an issue which is, of course, in the minds and hearts of all of you, which is the oppression of the Palestinian people. But we're going a step before that, explaining that this is not like a technical problem, that the people of Palestine are there. If it would have been an uninhabited land, we would be standing there as Jewish people around the world saying, we do not want this state of Israel because it is a rebellion against God. It's telling God, you can't protect us, that we're laughing, God forbid, in the face of God, who's saying, I'm giving you medicine. It's like the child who when the father puts him in a corner for doing some terrible deed, they run away from the corner and they laugh at the father. That's what it is. God says we are not to have a state. We accept that. Now, the sin, the crime of the Zionist state is compounded thousandfold because it was created in an inhabited land. They took Palestine, the Zionists. They would have taken another land that was more lush, was productive. They wanted to go to Uganda and here and there, but they understood in order to be able to get this massive backing that they need, support to create a country, they need to do something that should play on the emotions of people. So they turn to Palestine, but that they'll be able to make these advertisements that you constantly hear that says, oh, God gave us the land for 2,000 years, we didn't have the land. So they went to Palestine using the emotions and the ignorance of both the Jewish people and the evangelistic Christians and others who will support them for this. That is why they went to Palestine. But they knew, they were not, then don't think that they were fools. They're just wily, they're conniving. The ones who did this, they didn't do it because they wanted God. If they would want God, they would listen to their rabbis. If they would want God, I wouldn't have to quote Zev Jabotinsky. If you know, Jabotinsky was the mentor of Begin, and I'm going to quote him. In 1919, when they were, digging around, thinking about making this state, he wrote, and I'm quoting him, in Chadash Haaretz, a paper in Palestine, and he wrote, in the national home, they will announce that those Jews who have on themselves the rust of exile, and they refuse to shave off their beards and payos, earlocks, they refuse to shave off the beards, will be second-class citizens and will not have the right to vote. This was their concept of a Jewish home, mind you. But they, of course, realized that they can't really go around the world and telling them they won't get the support. So they grew beards, they went around, and they put on this aura of holiness, or maybe this word is familiar, a wolf in sheep's clothes. Maybe you heard that lately from one of them. So basically, this is what they're doing, and this is what they did. They went to Morocco, they went to Tunisia, they came in on airplanes to take the people out from there. These people in Morocco and Tunisia never saw an airplane in those days. In the United States, it was something new in the 1950s. And they came and said, in the prophecies, it says, God will take you out on the wings of eagles. And they called themselves Operation Wings of Eagles. They're coming, a miracle to gather in the Jews. And unfortunately, that's how they ensnared many people. And that's why they went to Palestine. But the ones who are true to Judaism, from day one till today, stand up and we protest. We're not militant, but we stand up and we say, don't speak in our name. This is a tremendous, we are humiliated. Our hearts cry for the people of Palestine. Our hearts cry for the glory of the Almighty that is being so stained and rubbed in the dirt with this evil movement that just laughs and ridicules the Torah, ridicules God, and keeps on just repeating this mantra. Where was God by the Holocaust? Where was God? Where is God's power? And this is what it's all about, undermining the whole concept of the belief, the subservience to God, the humility in front of God, and just sacrificing on the altar of their goal of having a state the souls and the bodies of anybody who stands in their way, whether it is Jewish people who stand in their way, or it's Palestinian people, and of course the Palestinian people is an unending river of bloodshed, millions of people who have been affected, emotionally murdered, and it destroyed. When we personally, thank God, we went to visit in Gaza. We went as a delegation, and mind you, wherever we went to Lebanon to visit. We went to visit Sabra Shaltil. We went to demonstrate when they attacked Lebanon ruthlessly. We went wherever we went. We went to Gaza, we brought medical aid. Thank God, we arranged to, thank God, an ambulance, whatever we went. This is all symbolic, obviously, because it's one drop in the ocean of what's needed for them. They need freedom, first of all, and they need everything that goes along with that, water, health, and so on. But we went there, and we were embraced, which is unbelievable, even though they're being so endlessly attacked by people who call themselves representative Judaism, yet they embraced us in Gaza after they were attacked in Gaza. We went there twice, we went to visit them, and the representatives there in Gaza embraced us and said, we have nothing against the Jewish people. We have nothing, we've been living with the Jewish people all the time. We just want our freedom. So this is what we've done, and we've seen with our own eyes, mind you, when we went there, how the world saw. They saw in El Zaytun, the Samuni family, I believe their name is, with, I think, like 30 members were unfortunately murdered with one bomb. And when this was a case that the world spoke about because it was such a tragedy. 30 members of one family. When we went to visit them, a year later, mind you, they were still living in like a piece of plastic hung over a wire or something. No water, no food. And this is something that people already spoke about around the world. But people can't separate the concept that they fall into the entrap of Zionism, of the intimidation that this is a religious conflict, that it's Jews against Muslims, that it's Jews against Arabs, and that there's an ingrained hate from the Muslims and the Arabs to the Jews. That's why the Zionists made their state there, that they should be able to stand up, and when anybody dares to start speaking about the suffering of Palestinian people, they can say, oh, it's really because you're an anti-Semite. It's an excuse. You don't really mean this. You mean it because you're just an anti-Semite. If there is such a thing as anti-Semitism, excuse me, there is. There is people who have anti-Semitism. But to stand up and oppose Zionism has nothing to do with this. Opposing Zionism, on the contrary, if there would be an end to this impediment to peace, if Zionism would be moved to the side, if there wouldn't be the state of Israel, then on the contrary, history would go back to what it was, how we lived together without any human rights groups to protect us. Why there was never a necessity for a UN or human rights groups, that we were living in the same courtyards, babysitting each other's children. It's facts. These are facts. People are still alive today who remember this. Even when it was in the 1930s, which wasn't the beginning of Zionism, because the Zionists will like to point to the massacre in 1920 in Hebron or whatever. They point to these things, say there was always a hate for Jews. That's not true. That started when Zionism started in the end of by the 1890s and so forth, and they incited so much that there was these and we're not condoning this, but there was a massacre, for instance, in Hebron, because the Zionists made demonstrations by the Wailing Wall. They made demonstrations. They went to Hebron. They came with guns. And the masses of Arabs, unfortunately, weren't able to differentiate and separate between Judaism and Zionism, which is exactly what Zionism wanted. And there was a massacre in Hebron in the 1920s. So the Zionists always point to that. They say, see, in the 1920s already they murdered people. Yes, but we have the letters, and also it's in a testimony here we have from Rabbi Baruch Kaplan, who learned in Hebron in the 1920s. And he says, I was there. We used to take strolls in the Arab neighborhoods in the middle of the night, children. And there was nobody had any problem. He said, they're the root cause. They were there. The Zionists came with guns and incited. And unfortunately, he cries when he talks about the people who were murdered from his yeshiva. He said, they're the ones who caused it. The Zionists caused it. And they come along all of a sudden, and they say, look at the evil people of Hamas. Again, we're not in any manner, shape or form, condoning violence. But we're saying, don't be fooled. When the ADL and these people come along and they say, hey, you said something against the Jew, you said something against the Jew. We're not condoning that. But look what you're doing. You're the root of this. You're causing this. It's somebody who goes and breaks the windows of his neighbor, and the kid goes and breaks the windows, and the father stands there and laughs. And then the guy comes out and he gets angry at the father. What do you think? He won't get angry? Does it give him a right to kill him? No. But when they get angry at these people, and where is it coming from? It's a reaction, it's not an action. All these things that are happening today, so when these Zionists open their mouths, you say, your hands are stained, they're covered in blood. You are the one who's causing all this bloodshed. When the Torah character stands up and speaks up, they say, look at these people, they have baggage. We have baggage? Let's go, let's take a walk, a stroll through the cemeteries of their own soldiers. What are they? Zionist soldiers. They all died. They died for a cause, right? And now if there wouldn't be the state of Israel, there wouldn't be this cause. There wouldn't be a problem. We wouldn't need all this. There wouldn't be a threat of suicide bombs. There wouldn't be a necessity for these walls, and tomorrow they're going to come up with some other brilliant idea, whatever they have. And they say that we have to have a guarantee, we have to have some type of insurance policy. What is an insurance policy? Gathering all the Jews into one place in a time of they complain about nuclear, and yet they insist the Jews should come here, gather together in a place. But I don't want to get into the logic, the illogic of all of this. According to the Torah, we're not to steal, we're not allowed to kill. They are not representing us. They are not representing Judaism. And the Jewish people around the world, we pray to God every day for the speedy and peaceful and a total dismantlement of the state of Israel. This is our prayer, and we don't want people to die. On the contrary, because we pray to God in all our communities. Thank you. So this is what the difference is. There's so much on each subject to talk about. I know they asked me also to mention about my baggage. My baggage is that we went to Iran and we met with President Ahmadinejad. Now, first of all, let me preface this. In Iran, first of all, there was an article in one of the Jewish, the Zionist papers, not a religious paper, The Forward, a few years ago. You can Google it. They wrote, it's so interesting. President Ahmadinejad gives charity to the Jewish community. He said he should wipe the Jews off the map or something, and yet he gives charity to the Jewish community there. Now, first of all, in Juan Cole, and thank you, and many others said that he never said, they mistranslated his words. He never said that they should wipe. He said that God will not allow, who does not countenance evil, will not allow it to happen. But he never said those words that they should wipe, that he's going to wipe the Jews off the map. He never said that. In fact, we've met with him many times, and what did he say? That he respects the Jewish people. We spoke about the Holocaust, another issue. We spoke about all these issues with him, and again, so when they're coming and they're saying, so first of all, the way they present him is totally the Zionist propaganda. So whenever you hear a word from them, don't even believe not what they're saying, but even the paper that it's written on. I'm not sure if it's paper, but so I'm just telling you, because sometimes a person says, being that it's raining outside, so you should. The solution is to take an umbrella. So Pierce doesn't even question the fact that he said that it's raining, because he said that it's raining outside, so you need umbrella. He questions, do you need umbrella? Don't need umbrella. But you think it's raining. When they say something, they subversively submit, you put in a statement or something. So what they're saying, don't believe a word. And so I'm saying, I'm not even going to say I'm not his advocate or whatever, but the point is that even, let's just say that there would be an enemy of the Jewish people. So what does the Torah tell us? God told us in the Torah that if you have an enemy, then you as a Jewish person should pray. Jacob's brother Esau wanted to murder him. And that's in the Bible, you can look it up. And he said, and so what did Jacob do? He prayed to God, he repented, and then he brought presents to his brothers Esau, and he embraced him. And that was his approach. This is Esau who clearly wanted to murder him. That is the Jewish approach, and we were told by our rabbis that the Torah teaches us, is telling us this story that we should follow in these ways. So when the Zionists come and they attack me for doing something, look at this, the nerve, the audacity. They are fighting, they are ridiculing and fighting the power of God, and that God rules the world. And they're saying that the right ways, according to their minuscule brains, that they see with their eyes, the approach is never again. They're going to spit into the ocean, and the ocean is going to spit back at them. What's going to happen? They're going to stand up, never again. We're going to show you. But God says that's not the approach for you. The approach is to, with asking for compassion, trying to win back the friendship. That is even by a true enemy. There's a lot more and deeper thoughts about this, but this is the Jewish approach. So they come and say, if I have to answer for myself that I'm going against the Torah, that we're doing something against, with traitors against the Jewish people. They're the traitors. The Jewish teaching is that if he would be an enemy, like they say, then they should become crawling, walking around trying to get this friendship from a person who has nuclear power, if that's the case. So I don't answer for them. In fact, we demonstrate in New York, we never plead with them. We don't look at them. They're rogues, they're thieves. We plead with the nations. We plead with President Obama, with the presidents. Do not be intimidated. We plead with the people of Denver. We say, do not be intimidated when they approach you. Remember, there's the Almighty on this world, and we have to do His will. And when you do His will, that it will be good. So, and when they're coming, that doesn't mean it's right because they have the power. Their intimidations, they're saying that the ones who don't go in their ways is right. Look at the facts. This is not the way. I'm going to end here with this, with God's help, because the people want to ask questions. So basically, our approach was we go to the people of Iran. We go to every leader who we heard who's angry at the Jewish people, which we did. And we met with them, and we went to Gaza, we went to Lebanon, we went to all, and everyone, first of all, they're not the enemies. That's the truth. And they say they don't hate the Jewish people. There's an impediment to peace. There's a cause. There's a reason why there is bloodshed. The impediment to peace is this blatant, this flagrant rebellion against God, stealing, killing, taking the land, rebelling against the belief that God rules the world is called Zionism. There's so much to talk about. I won't. And just to mention one other thing, because of the Holocaust, they asked me to mention it because that's one of my baggage, so I'll just have to mention that. When I went to Iran, there was also a Holocaust conference, which they stamped the Holocaust denial. Again, I'm not an advocate for, I'm not the lawyer for Iran, I'm not the lawyer for President Ahmadinejad, who it was, or anything like that. But the fact was, he said that the Zionists are using the Holocaust, whatever. He says he wants to have a meeting about that. There was some very, very great scholars who were supposed to come, and they were all sent letters and intimidated not to go there. At the end of the day, there were many scholars who went, who were who were the believers, of course, that the Holocaust happened and so forth, and but they weren't Zionists, so they weren't afraid, or whatever the story was. Many just came and went there, and they spoke about this issue. They were not deniers of the Holocaust. And when I went there, right after the Prime Minister opened the session for the Holocaust, I spoke, and I stood up and I said, and you can hear it's there, my speech is there. I spoke twice there, when I was supposed to schedule to speak, and right at the opening session. And I said, we are convinced millions of Jews, millions of Jews died in the Holocaust. They died because they were Jewish. And we hope the result, and we're convinced the result of this conference will be the recognition of the millions of Jews who died there. But that does not give a right in any manner to steal and take the land away from the Palestinian people. And that's what he spoke about, President Ahmadinejad. Now, everybody was there, Reuters, BBC, everybody, there was thousands of reporters, and everybody reported it very straightforward. Now, Associated Press put out a statement that said Rabbi Weiss said that the Holocaust, Rabbi Moshe Dovid Weiss, they made a mistake with one name. With that, it ended up good for them because they were able to squirm out of this issue. But they said Rabbi Moshe Dovid, there was no, excuse me, there was not that many other rabbis there. But so I was Yisroel Dovid Weiss, not Moshe Dovid Weiss. But anyway, that's what they were able to get. So they wrote that Rabbi Moshe Dovid said it was exaggerated. Now, first of all, my father escaped from Hungary when the Nazis came. My grandparents were killed in Auschwitz. My father-in-law, he should have a speedy recovery. He's very sick now. He was in Auschwitz, actually. He wakes up with nightmares, his wife says, till today, many years later. But basically, they put out the statement. It was in many hundreds of newspapers. That for the Torah Karta, we said that the Holocaust was exaggerated. Now, I came back, I threatened them with suits and so forth, and they made a retraction. And I have the retraction, again, in our documents. Where they write, I was on a program against Stefan. I thought I folded the paper here. But basically, the Associated Press had to make a retraction, and they made this retraction. They said that I said that the Holocaust, that one of their agents, one of their reporters said that I said that it was exaggerated the number, but this wasn't. But I never said that. I just said that exactly what I said, that the Palestinian people. That it doesn't give a right to take away from the Palestinians. I apologize that I'm not finding the page right now, but I will find it with God's help a little later, and I will open it to that, and I will quote you word for word. So basically that, again, because of questions, there's so many issues to talk about. I just want to say again, end with this, that we all hope and pray for the revelation of God. That's what we're all here for. Eventually, God will help everybody. This day will come, God's compassion, and we hope and pray every day for this, again, the removal of this impediment to peace that was created by people who are straying from God, Zionism, and their end result, which is the state of Israel. We pray for the removal of this impediment so we can once again live together, Jews, Muslims, Jews, Arabs, as we've had for all these thousands, for hundreds and hundreds of years together. And we should not be intimidated. Stand up, and if you're speaking up and speaking, you're not an anti-Semite if you speak up about this issue, but know the facts. And if you and we ask of the people also to speak to your parents and grandparents. Here, just a lady approached me, told a story from her grandparents, from a grandfather who was met with it's a long story, so I won't tell it. But she said, "You're my brother," and I have actually a story that's very similar because they both breastfed by one of their mothers. An Arab with a Jew. And this is what we want. So get these stories, write it down, because the older generation is passing on. Tape them. It's hard to write. Tape it down, bring it so we can show the world that contrary to the portrayal, this has nothing to do with the religious conflict. It has to do with a new movement that is a politically flawed movement, a selfish, politically flawed movement, and you're not removing the Jewish people from the land, the Holy Land, or because people say, "How can I live in the Holy Land?" What are you going to do? You're going to take the Jews out? No, you're removing the new neighbor to the block. Something came along beside the religions. Just remove this thing that's causing this foreign object, that's causing the body to erupt. Take away this foreign object, and we'll be able to live together in peace sooner nowadays. Stand up, do it. Don't be intimidated. Look at those people suffering in Palestine. Don't be afraid. You're not anti-Semitic. Be proud and say, "I know that the very religious Jewish communities also support this because it's against God. We support to stand up and speak up, and God help." Let's pray. Ultimately, it's in the hands of God. Let's pray with concentration to God to bring about this peace, this speedy peace. We can live together in peace and harmony. Thank you very much.
We'd like to open it up to questions now. So,
geknijst de pees. Neem ze zich op de andere berg. Ja.
okay.
Yes.
My question has to do with the Orthodox community in Israel and the fact that the government is trying to force them into the military, and I'm wondering how that stands.
Unfortunately, not everything is black and white, because you see in the pictures a lot of times Jewish people who are religious people who look to be very strong Zionists. The settlers, a lot of them are very people. Oh, you found it. Oh, thank you. Let me just quote it, because I said I would quote it. This is from the Associated Press. I apologize, just 1 second. This is date January 4th, 2007. It's signed by the Associated Press, Josh Hafner, and I'm quoting. You can look it up. It's in here. It's in you can find it. Members who used BCNY, whatever, Holocaust denies Jews. That's the title of the article. Sent December 15th on the New York Dateline. Are asked to use the following story. Associated Press, New York, in a December 15th story about an Iranian-sponsored conference on the Holocaust, the Associated Press erroneously attributed a claim that the number of Jews killed by the Nazis was exaggerated. Rabbi Yisroel Dovid Weiss, who attended the conference, denied making such a statement, said the claim does not reflect his position. He opposes the state of Israel and believes Israelis have used the Holocaust to gain sympathy and advantage. The story should have also cited Iranian news reports as the source of the quote. In other words, he's trying to say it's not their fault that it was an Iranian source that said it. Josh Hafner, news editor, New York City Associated Press. So they had to make a retraction of their statement. But this story, when I was there, was in headlines, hundreds and hundreds of papers announced. This retraction, I don't know where you would find it, the retraction. So, of course, the name stayed in Torah, the deniers of the Holocaust. That's unfortunate. And so when they come along, these Zionists, they claim, we have baggage. Our baggage is, yes, baggage that we're proud to carry around. And just like when you go traveling, you take your most precious objects. Our baggage is our Jewish religion, but it's not baggage that we don't want. It's baggage that we insist on taking along with us. That's Judaism. They are either ashamed of their religion or they just don't want it, they detest it, and they want a new type of religion with a new type of baggage. We don't accept that. Now, I'm sorry, you were asking about there. Now, unfortunately, today, and what they call Israel, they have settlers. The settlers are the ones who dare to go out to the edge. Why? Because these are idealists. They take students, like I say, they play on the emotions. They say, we were in exile so many years, and they get these sometimes religious people. But this is a fringe of Judaism. It's a very small amount of the Jewish people. The ones who come from, almost invariably, they come from they don't come from very religious families. The ones who come from really true religious families, they know who to go to. They go to all the communities in Jerusalem, in London, and New York, with the elite, the Ivy League of Jewish teaching, and they don't become Zionists. But the ones who go to the settlements, these are these idealists who Meir Kahane, JDL, whatever they are. So you always see them because they're always up front. And unfortunately, the suicide bombers, and they get attacked. The Torah doesn't allow them to put their kids out there on places to get killed or either not. It's against the Torah. What gives them the right to do that? But they do it. And so this is what you see. Now, there's two types of people who don't send their children to the Israeli army. There's the ones who don't send it because it's against our religion. We won't stand up and fight and support. In fact, the vast majority of religious Jews, they won't send their children to the army. And that's a point of contention there. Because even though a lot of the religious support, they're afraid to return land because they say, it's a catch-22, we'll be overrun. Now, because they made such enemies of the Arabs, now they're going to come, they're going to murder us. So we have no choice. That's a basic propaganda of Zionism in order to ensnare even the religious Jews who don't support them. Again, we don't condone it. We have large Jewish communities who never recognize the state of Israel. We say, I'm sorry. This shouldn't be in existence, this state. But they are able to get others to support the state by saying, if you return the land, so it's still and all, but they won't go fight for the land. They'll celebrate with us the day the state ends. They won't march on the parades. But they have these people, so they don't go to the army. These people who don't go to the army, now they get support from the government. We don't take support. We have our communities, that we have our own chief rabbi, we have a rabbinate. We don't recognize the Israeli rabbinate. It's a window dressing. It's a farce. We have our chief rabbis, as we've mentioned before, from before the state of Israel. So we don't go because we don't recognize them, we don't support them. Others who don't go, when they were told that they're going to be forced into it, so they're demonstrating they don't want it. But there's two types. There's people who don't go because they don't want to die for a cause they don't believe in, and there are others who are totally against the existence of the state, never have anything to do with the state at all. So there's different groups. But unfortunately, what I'm trying to say is that you see religious Jews a lot of times involved. And they're always up front, so it looks like there's more religious Jews supporting it than there actually is, because they're always up front. Or even, unfortunately, after a suicide bomb, they have these groups who bury the dead. So they're sometimes from religious communities, they go out there. But it's not because they're Zionists, they're going out there, unfortunately, because they have to bury the dead. This is only a touching. We're trying to open a window that you can look forward and study more of this subject. We're just trying to shed some light on it, that you should understand that there's a whole other story behind all that's happening.
We only have another 15 minutes before they start broadcasting the prayers throughout the mosque here. So, if we could keep our answers a little bit short.
Oh, okay, yeah,
I hate not
right.
to stand up to a rabbi, but
Okay.
yes, sir. Michael.
Rabbi Weiss, my name is Michael Rabin from Boulder, Colorado. Really appreciate you coming here and making these statements to basically say that the Jewish state of Israel is wrong. It's wrong from your perspective on some basis of religion, and also morally wrong. It's doing bad things, evil things. And so I appreciate that. I have a question, though, and I would like your comment about your point about very religious Jews abhor this idea of this Jewish state of Israel. But in my experience and my involvement in this campaign for the freedom of Palestine, in the American diaspora, the Jewish diaspora, it is the religious Jews, the Jews that attend synagogue on Saturday morning, that are fully and totally integrated into the support, the political support of AIPAC. And that is a very important part of why this country, the United States of America, supports this awful Zionist project called the Jewish state of Israel.
Right, yeah. 100% right. Again, that's part of our frustration and hurt and how we're humiliated. It's true. First of all, you said you made so eloquently, you said there's the religious thing and there's the human rights issue, the human rights, the morality. We consider what people call human rights, we call godliness. God tells us that we have to have compassion. God tells us that what humanity, human rights, this is part of, an integral part of Judaism. That's why one of the reasons that we oppose the state of Israel, as I mentioned, to kill, to steal, is against the religion. As I said before, we're waiting for the opportunity to show, which God requires of us, our gratitude for the people who've embraced us and given us a safe haven in our home. This is what we want to give up, to return Palestine, to give it back to the people, and to be able to show constantly our gratitude to the people of Palestine and the other Muslim and Arab countries. Now, what you're mentioning, yes, it's 100% true. There is a lot of because a religious fervor drives them to support it. Now, first of all, it happens to be that AIPAC, if you will go, the vast majority, the majority at least, is certainly not religious. In fact, they just made it over a Sabbath, where they desecrated the Sabbath. They made registration, writing the names on Sabbath and so forth. It was on the Sabbath. Yes, they had also Orthodox people. But again, the reason you won't hear the thousands and tens of thousands of people who would come out to demonstrate, would take the time, because of the intimidation. What you've had here in the mosque, the threats that was given them, that they're going to close down the nonprofit, they're going to do this, they're going to do that, that's just a drop of what they can do to us. They call us, they say, you have children in school, we know where your children are going. People, after every demonstration, we have tens of thousands of people, you can see on our site, who demonstrate. When Netanyahu came to visit Obama, you can see the demonstrations that we had, tens of thousands of people, wasn't shown in the regular press. But after every demonstration, people lose their jobs, because they come in your face, they take pictures, and then they see, oh, you belong for this business, so they call the head of it, you want our advertising, you want to do business with us? We have a worker who's a terrible Jew, who's against our own people, and so forth, and so on and so on. So in every manner that they could think of, they intimidate, and people are afraid to speak up. That said, thank God, we had a chief rabbi of Palestine who moved out of Palestine, moved to New York. His name was Rabbi Teitelbaum. There's a town upstate New York. It's called KJ, Kiryas Joel, and he was Rabbi Teitelbaum of blessed memory. And he kept on saying it's our obligation. He used to cry when he said it. At the cost of our lives, to stand up and let the world know that they don't speak in the name of Judaism. It's against the Torah. And he said, who knows how much bloodshed? He said this before there was all this bloodshed. He said, who knows how much bloodshed is going to? There's a tape of it. He's banging on it. He said, how much bloodshed they're going to cause. So there is a large, many Jews who oppose it. But there are, unfortunately, religious Jews, because if it becomes a religious issue, which the Zionists want, then of course there's a more fervor, and they're there, and you see them more. But first of all, but they're not the majority, but there are there. And unfortunately, I can only say that it's a flawed concept of the religion, because the religion is clear that we are not allowed to have a state, and we have whole volumes All the rabbis in Europe, by the way, before the Second World War, I know it's a little long, and before the Second World War, universally, all the rabbis, it was hardly a community. If somebody became a Zionist, he was ostracized. After we lost the majority of our Jewish brethren and our leaders, because the first people that were killed, both in the Soviet Union and in the Nazis, was the leaders, the teachers, the educators. They murdered them, so the Jews were leaderless. And the Zionists came and they gave land, they gave property, they gave this and support. They have an endless well of money. So they were able to ensnare Jews. But prior to the Second World War, everybody opposed it. Today, you still, thank God, have many Jews who oppose it, but they were able to ensnare people into their doing. So we don't condone it. It hurts us. They are there, but it's not the representation, both not of the religion, which is clear, and thank God, not of many Jews who are true to the religion. We stand up and our approach, because this is the Jewish approach. Again, the Zionists have the audacity with their modus operandi, the way of protecting what they want is being on the offensive and accusing you of being anti-Semitic and a self-hating Jew. What the Torah tells us, it's like a fantasy. It doesn't make sense. They're coming and telling us how a Jew is to live his life and how we are to approach. We have a Torah that is written so clearly. Like I said, Jacob went Esav, and the rabbis, the Chassam Sofer, all the leading rabbis told us this is the way we should live our lives and approach when there is an enemy, a true enemy. The Zionism says, how dare you give a hand? Our approach is the Torah approach that will save lives. It happens to be, even if we wouldn't understand the logic behind it, we do what the Torah tells us. But it's logical. Is the approach that I should go to every person who speaks against Jews with a venom, I should go and I should say, okay, we'll see who's stronger. What am I going to accomplish? You see, Zionism doesn't care that 10 Jews are going to die as long as they're going to have a state. On the contrary, there'll be panic, and they say, we have to have a state. 10 Jews died, and God forbid, in America. We have to have a state now. So it's a win-win situation for them. The more Jews are harmed, Sharon said to the people of France, anti-Semitism, come to Paris. And he became a persona non grata over there in Paris, if you remember the story. They want anti-Semitism. They want to incite, and they don't care. It's going to cost lives. Anything gets sacrificed on the altar of their idealism because they don't have the godly measuring stick. We say, God tells us, no, that's not the approach. Somebody has something against me. Yes, I gave my hand for David Duke. They say, I don't remember, but it was probably 100% true that he was at the conference. I went over and I heard him even giving. I was waiting to be interviewed on a television station, and he said words. He said, this rabbi said that you could eat the blood of somebody, eat not the blood of something. I forgot. He made a quote like that, like as if the Torah tells us that we should kill somebody. Crazy things. I waited. He finished. I spoke to him. I said, this is not the Torah. This is not what it says in our Torah. You've been told wrong. Our approach is our approach is not, again, our approach, the Torah approach. The Torah approach is that you should approach the one who is an enemy, if they're an enemy. Not everybody who's been stamped an enemy is an enemy. And in fact, most probably the vast majority aren't what the Zionists want to portray as enemies. But even the ones that would be truly enemies, why are they enemies? Is it because of a misconception, not understanding something, or something, a false story, or is it because of something that needs an apology that would happen to them? Maybe something happened to them, we have to apologize. We want, and that is what and if it's because they simply have a hate, maybe we can just plead with them that they shouldn't hate us. So we have to do, that's what the Torah says. It doesn't, if the many people understand this logic. In fact, many of our leaders in today's world say that is the real approach. That is the way for peace, by approaching, trying to embrace. And I think everybody who's a logical human being will say, if there's a way of, instead of being aggressive and militant, the first thing you try to do, what's the UN about, right? That you try to have a peaceful solution to any type of thing. So yes, if there's somebody who's said terrible things, or so forth, we approach them. So yes, we did meet with David Duke. We met with many other people, and with God's help, we will continue doing this because that's what the Torah wants of us. We will meet with people and we'll try to end bloodshed and bring peace, as God's name is so, to the world. Now, as I was saying, just one other little thing, because they had asked before about Jewish people. I'm sure There are many people here in Denver, because I go to Washington, D.C., there's Baltimore, there's any city and state that I know of. I meet people and they say, great work, Jewish people. But I can't even, sometimes I ask them, can you do me a favor and deliver a message for me? They say, please. I can't, I'm afraid. They don't want to be seen, they don't want to be, because if they'll be subject to who knows what, and intimidation, and you see what intimidation there is. So it's unfortunate you don't see the will of so many of the Jewish people who are true to Judaism. You only see the ones who are Zionists, who have this awe against the haughtiness, what they have, because we say it's from the Satan that's driving them, and not God's morals. Yeah.
I was just going to comment, Jesus said, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. And then he said, blessed are the peacemakers. He didn't say the peacekeepers. You can keep peace with a big stick, but making peace requires the conditions of justice and fairness and equality. That's my little sermon. Stephanie.
So I have a question in terms of the other, the Jewish community who feels that maybe Israel, and now is the time when everyone should be converging in Israel. What do you say to that? Because I mean, what are the conditions going to look like different from what is happening now? Does that make any sense?
Yeah. These are many prophecies from all the different prophets, and most of the prophecies are written in parables. There's no clear, a Jewish person, if you ask him, when is the Messiah going to come, the Mashiach, when is this going to be the great revelation where all humanity is, and if they say they know the answer, then there's one thing that's guaranteed: they don't know what they're talking about, because nobody knows. They say the ones who know don't say. The great men who know don't say, and the ones who don't know, they're the ones who are mouthing about it. And in fact, the codifier of law, Maimonides of blessed memory, writes that a person shouldn't be delving in the end of time in all these prophecies. It's parables. When the time comes, we will understand what the prophecy meant. What we are to do is simply bring the coming of the Mashiach, or the Messiah, of this revelation of God. How? Through good deeds, by being a good Jew, by being a good human being, by serving the Almighty. When we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, then that will bring closer, we believe, God's compassion in the end of this period, this exilic period, and the revelation of God. But we have no idea when this will happen. We hope, and our rabbi said it's the end. It's close to the end of time. It is this tremendous tragedy. What there was, the Holocaust, where millions and millions, they were slaughtered and so forth. That it's like they say, a candle before it burns out, it flares up. They said, and unfortunately they said it would have happened. Many said if it wouldn't have been that the Zionism came about, which is such a rebellion against God, such a blatant refutal of the kingdom of the Almighty, built and predicated on the fact that God is weak. And that's what, and uprooting the souls. One of the great rabbis, Briskerov, we have a quote here. I've had a book, The Rabbis Speak Out, where it's a compilation of the rabbis, the greatest leaders of Judaism from around the world, how they spoke their opposition to Zionism, because it will be tens of thousands of more, and there are many books of compilation, but this is just statements from the leading rabbis. The Briskerov, he's considered one of the leaders of Judaism from close to 100 years ago already, Briskerov, 80 years ago, whatever. He said they didn't create a state and then try to uproot Jews from the Almighty. The reason of this creation of the state was to uproot Jews from the Almighty, because they transformed the heart of a Jew who always knew, I have a problem, I repent, I serve God, I go to the Torah. They have another thing. You want to win over God's will. Even the ones who think that it's something to do with God, donate to JNF. That's the way you can buy off God. It doesn't work like that. So basically, this is you have to attend. This is they have unfortunately misconstrued what it is. But we don't know the end of time. The only way to do God's is by doing God's will. That will bring the end of time. And when I just want to say one little point. When they speak to them, I say, what are you saying? You have to have a state. Somebody just asked me before. They said, what do you say to the people who say, it's enough, we suffered enough, we have to have a state? So I said, what do you mean? You're saying that I could take a land away from people who've been living there hundreds of years. Why? Why? Would you go to some place and go here, come to Denver and take away people's homes? No, there you say, I have a right. Why? Because it's mine. I'm not stealing. God gave it to you. So in other words, you're counting on the fact that God gave you through the Torah. So if that's the case, look at the authorities of the Torah. How come the very religious rabbis say you're stealing? You're not allowed to do it. Here, so it's contradictory. You're using the Torah, you're using your emotions of the Torah, and then you're ignoring what God said. I know you're going to be impatient. Have patience, wait, and don't steal. When the time comes, everybody will go up together and serve God in peace. That's what I would tell these people. But unfortunately, they're going to go to their rabbi from these questionably religious communities. Are going to say, those people, they're a bunch of fanatics. Where do they come? Who are they? They're self-hating Jews and this and that. But if you go to Brooklyn, you see our communities. I don't know how they explain that away, but this is the way so they come back and they start feeling, if they were feeling guilty or something, after they come back to the rabbi and they feel good and they can eat their Sabbath meal afterwards.
Beth, and then you. Okay.
I just have a quick question for you. Okay, you had several of the tactics of the Zionists in Denver was, of course, to threaten the mosque and smear your name. And you've already answered one of those questions about, they said that you were a denier of the Holocaust. Another thing they said was you were caught shaking hands with a member of the KKK. And I just want to give you an opportunity to defend yourself against this.
Yeah,
What does it mean behind it?
Like I said, I think I said clearly, first of all, we go and we try to placate and correct and change the hearts of people. This is what the Torah requires of us, that we go and approach even the worst enemies. And in fact, I want you to know that there were rabbis who approached it, and there's there's absolutely no time for this now, but we have a book here called Genocide, the Holocaust Victims Accused. There were rabbis who worked to save the Jews by the Holocaust in Hungary after 1942-43, where the Jews were being slaughtered in many lands over there. In Hungary and Romania was in 1944, 1945, was invaded then by the Nazis. And there were rabbis who had seen what happened in the other parts of Europe, and they secretly approached Eichmann and his henchmen, his name should be obliterated, and they wanted to buy off the Jews. And they were thwarted by the Zionists, because the Zionists said, sure, we'll give you money to do it. It's a whole long thing. There's a book called Perfidy from Ben Hecht, written about this terrible tragedy. The rabbis, Rabbi Weissmandel of blessed memory, there's many schools in our communities that it's called Nitra schools, and he wrote books about this. The fact that they almost were able to say for I think around the 1 month, they stopped killing Jews in Auschwitz. How? Because they made these attempts to save them, because they secretly to save them from the hand that the Nazis shouldn't slaughter them, and they could have been successful. Zionists, we have books about this, that they were involved, they were and in collusion in some cases with the Nazis, and in other cases, because at the beginning of the war, I was extremely sure, just at the beginning of the war, the Nazis and them had the same idea. Nazis wanted the Jews out, and the Zionists wanted the Jews to go to Palestine, so they worked together at the beginning. Later, the rabbi said the approach should be to placate and try to speak to Hitler. Rabbi Weissmandel said if we would have begged Hitler and spoken to him and apologized, who knows how many Jews, but he wrote in his book, he said, you should know that he spoke to one of the diplomats from Germany who said that when Stephen Wise, who was a reform rabbi who lived in New York, and we don't hold of him at all. And he said, I'm going to call out a boycott against Hitler. And he said, Hitler threw himself on the floor. He said, I'm going to, if they're going to fight against me, I'm going to fight against them. And he bit the carpet. He was a wild man. He bit the carpet. And that was from a diplomat from Germany who went there. Basically, they incited. The Jewish approach would have been just the opposite, to try to buy the friendship, to try to placate, to see to get away the hate. And maybe who knows how many Jews we could have saved. That is the Jewish approach. They're going to say, how dare you? You're going to go speak to Hitler? And if I could save 1 million Jews, does it make? I'm going to use my organs and say no, because it's not. It doesn't make sense. I should meet a murderer. Yes, if I could save 1 million Jews, if it would be his son, he would talk different. So that is the Jewish approach. And that is when it's an enemy, and a lot of times it's not enemies. They're making enemies. They incite. They make people. They turn them into enemies because they accuse them of being anti-Semitic. They do things and to create a Jewish a hate and animosity, and then they say they have to have a state to protect the Jews.
My connection piggybacks off of what you just said a little bit. First of all, the word anti-Semite I think is a little misleading too, because it people say anti-Semite means anti-Jew, but Semite is anyone from that region, which is misleading by itself. But one of the things that Israel's doing is all in the name of the Jews. And it seems to me a lot of the anti-Semitism and claims that are out there are either fabricated or exaggerated. But I do think that there's a possibility that anti-Semitism in a Nazi sense could actually rear its head again because of the things that Israel's doing. For example, if we are led into another world war, it will be very clear that Israel was one of the main countries that did this, and it would be clear that that's being done in the name of the Jews. What's your thought about that, the potential for what Israel's doing to be a great threat to Jews? Because it seems to me like Israel may be the greatest threat to Jews in the world today.
With the help of the Almighty, we always say that we're not saying there was no such thing as anti-Semitism before, or there isn't, but the greatest instigator, the greatest factory of creating anti-Semitism is Israel. And if somebody stands up and says, I don't have anything against the Jews, in fact, there was a study in Europe, I think from the European Union, and they wanted to say that there's anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. And they said, okay, we're not getting, by the way, into the semantics, so a Semite is also an Arab and so forth, we're not getting anything, but let's just leave the word anti-Semitism the way it's presented as anti-Judaism. But they refuse to accept that. They say that, no, you can't say that. You can't separate anti-Semitism from anti-Zionism because they don't want to separate it. That's why they want to call it the Jewish state. They weren't happy, I think, by the Oslo Clause, Netanyahu, they didn't want it to be, they insisted it's called the Jewish state because they want to confuse this issue, make it like it's a religious conflict, and if you're against Judaism, you're against that. And you're right, of course, that the repercussions of this state of Israel is not only in that conflict over there in Palestine, but in the Middle East and so on. How much bloodshed, how much suffering. It's such a simple issue. You have a new movement, and the world insists, or whoever, the ones who are backing this, that you have to keep this cemented there. Imagine if somebody puts a piece of a splinter in the eye, and he's going to take medication on medication that the eye should be numbed to this piece of a splinter in the eye. No, you remove the splinter. We're talking here? There were 3 people living there. There were Muslims, there were Christians, and there were Jews. And all of a sudden, less than 100 years ago, a movement came around 100 years called Zionism. Prior to that, we were living together in peace. What is so hard to comprehend this? Why don't you understand that this is the newcomer to the block that's like putting a foreign object, you're taking an Alka-Seltzer pill, you're putting it in a glass. Just remove, God help peacefully, this impediment to peace, and then we can live in peace.
Hello, my name is Melissa. Just one thing, you don't have enough time, clearly, to explain the British mandate, nor do you have Resolution 181, and I'm very well learned on it, and it's a mess. And what happened as a result is a bigger mess. And but what I wanted to touch on is all of this discussion throughout history has ignored the simple facts. When I ask a Jewish person or a Christian, do you believe in the 10 Commandments? Do you believe when Moshe said, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad? When he said that, and do you believe in that, and do you believe what he said after he delivered the 10 Commandments, that thou shalt not add to or take away from what I have given you today, but obey the commands of Adonai? When Moshe said that, that's not a parable, in my mind. I believe it. I also believe in the revelation. I believe in the revelation that when Adonai said, you will know when I have left the Jewish state, when you are routed to exile. through Babylon, the Chaldeans, led by Nebuchadnezzar. What happened? In 722, first in 586, the first kingdom fell. 722, the second kingdom fell. What I'm trying to get at is no one believes this, no one ever teaches this. I know Rabbi Simcha Weintraub. I'm very well acquainted with Rabbi Montalani. No one teaches this. Because why? Because I believe this is the truth. Adonai said, you will know when I've left the Jewish nation. Now, along come the Dead Sea Scrolls written by the Pharisees and the Sadducees. They were written by the Essenes, documenting what? The breakers of the covenant. So my point is, all of this isn't being taught. None of it. Not the Dead Sea Scrolls, and they're not parables. I believe the Revelation is not a parable. I argue with that. The Jewish people don't belong there because Adonai said, the descendants of Abraham, who are closest to me, will live in Palestine. That can be Jews, Christians, or Muslims. So what I'm trying to get at is we don't speak the truth. If you believe in the Revelation, you know via the Dead Sea Scrolls, we broke the covenant. Jews broke the covenant by rewriting the Torah, which happened when? During the exile. That's when the Talmud was begun. So if we broke the covenant, and I used to be Moshe Ben Adam, Marx. I lived on 98th Street. I belonged to B'nai Jeshurun. At 59 years old, I found out, I read the Dead Sea Scrolls 5 times. I retranslated many parts of the Torah. I was shocked. And I want to be closer to Adonai. And the only way I could do that was through Islam. Because these are the truths.
It's very important with the points that you brought up that, first of all, I like to always stress, people say that, why can't you live together? We're so close in our practices of religion. But at the same time, I always like to say, yes, we may be very similar issues, we have very similar laws. At the same time, it is clear that we have a definite different religion, but that was never an impediment to being able to coexist in peace. At the times, through the hundreds of years, Jewish people lived in Muslim lands, they were practicing and flourishing as very religious Jews, as religious communities, and flourished, and it wasn't an impediment to peace. And we definitely have a different religion, there's no question about it. Now, you've mentioned a few issues there. Obviously, the time doesn't allow for that, but we, as a Jewish people, have an exacting system. We were given the Torah on Sinai, and there was never a gap in our teaching. It was passed down to us from generation to generation. We have to follow strictly by this Torah that was given to us, and that we have to do. We believe God, we believe, and it's a fact for us that we have to follow this teaching to exacting to the law. But that is never an impediment of coexisting, as history attests to that thing. Now, you mentioned, so we have this difference. Now, you mentioned about the parables, that you don't agree with parables. There's, in our teaching, again, we have a system of how we have to follow the Torah, which allows for Jewish people to live in the Holy Land as individuals. That is why they were able to live for hundreds of years as individuals, not as a sovereign state, but as individuals under different rulers, whoever it may be, the indigenous population. That's why we lived under the Turkish and the British and whoever it were before and after. We can be, except under Zionists, because the Zionists are a rebellion against God, but we can live under whoever the rule may be, and that is required of us. So I respectfully disagree in disagree in the fact that how we should be, because we as Jews follow it not the way you understand our religion, but the way we have to follow our religion. The covenant that we made, we follow it that way, and we understand that these are parables. But parables to a certain respect. Other things are very clear, and also altogether our religion is very clear in the system of practicing. Certain prophecies, like how when the Messiah will come, are parables. Others are very clear, and all our law system is an exacting system which we follow through the Talmud and the Shulchan Aruch, the law books. So that's the difference that we have, but it's never an impediment to peace, the difference of religion.
No, I never indicated it was an impediment to peace. My point is, we as a Jewish nation, we as a group, broke the covenant. And when we broke the covenant beyond repair, Adonai left us.
Again,
No, wait a minute, let me finish. And within the context of that,
yeah.
he says in the Torah, Muhammad's name is mentioned 12 times, once as a proper name. If you ask someone, oh, what is Song of Solomon 5? Every Jew you ask will say it's about God and the nation of Israel, and the Jewish nation, as it were. But when you say, how can sheep's cloth be the parable for teeth? We're not talking about that. Then all of a sudden it changes to Solomon and
I got your point.
Come on.
Excuse me, I'm not here to argue. That's yeah.
If the Torah
Yeah.
is correct and the covenant has been broken beyond repair, we became idolaters.
Wait, again, I'm going to step back and say it again. We have definitely, if I would feel you're right, if we would feel that that's the right approach, then obviously we would be Muslims. But obviously we have a distinct different religion, but there is a distinct different religion. You have your interpretation. We have the way that we feel. We were told it was handed down from generation to Jewish religion. And this is an ongoing religious issue, which it's not for there. But the point is that we have this religion, and yet we have to always remember, after we have such a discussion, that this was never the impediment to peace. Impediment to peace is this something called Zionism, nothing to do with the Jewish religion or the Islamic religion. It's a totally different subject.
But the Torah's been rewritten.
No, I totally disagree with you about that. Yeah.
Let's take one more question, and then I think we need to recess. Okay, two. You and you. Okay, ladies first. And then you can, I think.
Rabbi, for being with us, and I thank you for your courage.
Thank you.
I have two questions. One is, are you and Dr. Norman Finkelstein good friends? And second, how can we purchase your beautiful writings?
Yeah, I can't say we're good friends because unfortunately, we share views about that Zionism is corrupt and flawed and, just totally not there. It's wrong, it's totally wrong. But unfortunately, he's not coming from where we're coming. We're coming from the Judaism that it's totally wrong, and we believe that with the one God who rules the world, and we have to keep God's commandments. He's not coming from there, but he comes with a logical explanation. Again, I mentioned earlier, like I said, I'm reluctant to speak through the concept of logic that you don't want to concentrate Jews in one place. Because why? Because then maybe you find the flaw in my logic. At the same time, we say that it's neither here nor there, because the issue is the religion. It's not a Jewish state. The Jewish religion does not allow stealing the land. It does not allow a Jewish state in any manner, shape, or form, whether you agree with my logic or not, or whether you can comprehend God's logic. The covenant, by the way, you have to come back to that, was we believe, the Jewish belief is that the first tablets were broken, but the covenant was not changed. And whatever, we have a different discussion. But so we have obviously a different concept of religion. Now, you're asking about our books. I appreciate that. There are things that are for sale that it can be for very minimal amount of money. The rabbis speak out on our site, which is www.nkusa. It's just a few dollars. We just call for the reprinting. Whether it's this, for instance, a compilation of the leading rabbinical authorities that you can see from there how all the communities oppose Zionism. The historic documents, the traditional Torah opposition to Zionism. There's others you can see at our site, and you can take everything you can take off from our site. We're not looking to make any money on it. We feel it's our godly obligation, and we appreciate your support. I appreciate your kind words.
One last question.
Well, again, thank you for coming. It's wonderful to hear so many very interesting things, at least I didn't know about. My question is, I think we all want peace. We want the conflicts to end. How do you see the way forward, what needs to happen to Israel and Palestine?
Again, with the help of the Almighty, I have a rabbi, a senior rabbi, his name is Rabbi Beck, should have long and healthy years, who was actually in a bunker when the Nazis invaded Hungary. He was like 6 months, he was hidden in a bunker, and then he went up to Palestine. He left Palestine with his family because he didn't want to be under Zionist control, but he's a senior rabbi, a very holy man, and he always likes to say, I like to separate the issues. Firstly, we should not confuse this, that we're not allowed to have states, which I kept repeating, is a fact of the Torah. We're not allowed to have a sovereignty, we're not allowed to steal the land. So when we have to show, on the contrary, appreciation to the people who've been so good to us. The solutions, that we could try with God's help by following the edicts of the Torah. With God's help, there will be peace. If you remove the state of Israel, of course, it just makes it sounds so simple, such a complex issue. Then there would, with God's help, be peace, because God tells us if you follow Him, it will be peace. You could guess how come this happens, that happens, whatever. Do we have the exact solution? How that will be? I don't know. But one thing I can say. When you go to a doctor and the doctor sees a person hemorrhaging and he gives him cortisone and does something else, and the guy goes out of the office feeling good, he's more or less a murderer. He's not, or he's just simply negligent. When the problem is, again, that the world has totally confused, has not understood the problem here. They keep on thinking that it's a religious conflict and so forth, and a hate from Arabs to Jews and Muslims to Jews. It's terrible, and it carries over to how Muslims are accepted in the Western world, because if they were like this to the Jews, people in the Western world, the society, they relatively knew the Muslim communities, so they say if they treated other people like that, then they're, they're vilified. So it's misunderstood the problem. We have to separate the issues. Clearly that there's nothing to do with religion. Understand. So the people who are the thinkers, the ones who want, if they could somehow, like there's, be able to approach this and say, look, this is obviously the problem, a Zionist state. How are we going to get this dismantled and removed? Is it that there should be a total democratic state? We as Jews say that it's up to the Palestinian people to have whatever type of country they want, it's their land. But whatever the approach is, with profuse apology, with restitution to the Palestinian people, and relocation of the Zionists who carried out interrogations and crimes, and so it would cost billions of dollars to do such a thing, and the rest of the Jews, there would be a fatwas issued by the Arab leaders. If there would be billions of dollars in restitution to the Arab communities, and try resettle them, and so forth. It's not a wild, without any thought. The people who are doing actions are usually under leaders, and if there's fatwas issued by leaders, there wouldn't be murder. Just like in South Africa, people couldn't understand if it would be able to end the apartheid. It ended. People said it would be a slaughter. Why? But you see, there's such a concept can happen. Over here, people say, how can you, it's a catch-22, how can you get out of it? It's under a leadership. If there would be issued fatwas to say that they shouldn't do any damage to the Jews. Like I say, if there would be, let's say there would be the United Nations with America, let's just say would issue billions of dollars, just like they pay every year to be able that the Israeli army should be able to build walls and separation walls, and billions of dollars for arms that's never ending. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. They have to keep on being more advanced. And actually, it's for the armies that they should be the arms that they should be able to test their arms, whatever it is. But if they would instead of doing that, take a few billions of dollars to resettle the Jews, the Israelis who committed these crimes, and restitution for the Palestinian people, in a way of resettling the land that we can live together in peace. Who says that there can't be such a concept of a removal of called a Zionist state, and that we should be able to live together? It has to be the will of the leaders. It has to be the understanding, the clearness in the understanding what is the root cause, what is the problem, which is Zionism. And I, as a religious, say it's that the root cause because it's against God and the religion. It will happen one day. First of all, again, just one little point. Statistically speaking, there's going to be more Arabs than Jews there, and they're all going to swear allegiance to the state of Israel. Where's the logic in that, right? So, but anyway, but again, I come back, according to religion, we can't have the state. It will end. In the Torah, it says, why are you rebelling against God? It will not be successful. Even if we're not naysayers, but it can't be successful as long as there's 1 inch of this sovereignty, which is a rebellion against God. The Torah says it will end. It has to end. That's not because I'm a prophet, because the Torah says something that's against God cannot exist. It will end. We pray to God, and we stand in fear and how much more suffering and pain it will entail till this thing will end. We pray to God every day. It should be with it's easily passed, like we see USSR just passed over, like nobody would have believed, and that we should be able to live in peace.